Hey, 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 you are joining the Cover One Fantasy Show with one of your normally three amigos, but we are amigo-less tonight. Rich, you I was almost solo here. You're joining from Seattle. How's Seattle?
Yeah. You're almost, you had your big shot. I stole it. You had your big shot to be the solo fantasy host. But no, Seattle's great. So I'm out here for a work trip and was able to go out down around the pier, the famous market and stuff, and do some brewery tasting and some whiskey
Nice.
tasting. Even though I was just on the Bourbon Trail last week, so it was pretty funny. We ended up doing more whiskey tasting at some distillery down by the pier. Got some great seafood. So I'm actually now up in Blaine, Washington, which is about 2 hours north of Seattle, doing some more logistics work up here for the night. So yeah, but happy to be able to join for a little bit and talk some fantasy football instead of how to move things around the world from a logistics standpoint. So.
Yeah, no, it's you're a man of many talents. It's a lot of fun to be able to go through, and I'm happy to see that there's some normalcy coming back to the world. You and I used to travel a lot for work, and now getting back into that kind of thing is fun to see people out there and getting back to whatever our new normal is going to be. But hope the trip goes well.
Yeah, no, this is my first work trip since the pandemic. So actually, until last week when I was jumped on for like 2 minutes in the beginning from the Bourbon Trail, I had not traveled at all. Since the pandemic, but now that fully vaxxed and all that kind of stuff, Seattle's kind of crazy though from that standpoint. Like first time I've had to show my vaccination status to do something.
Ah, okay.
So they're
It's
very
funny. I took my daughter to go see The Lion King on Sunday night, the musical, and I had to show my card, and I had to take her and go get tested that day and show the like lab certified real Urgicare one. I was like, oh, well, that's different. Okay.
Mine was a little different. I didn't see Lion King. I just got to drink some really good bourbons.
Also adventurous,
it
circle
was
of
worth
life,
it.
it goes around.
It was worth it.
So for fantasy football for this week, it's going to be fun because we have some different things coming along, but it's getting into the point where, hey, week 6, it's now getting into the injuries that are tough, and now you're lining up injuries with the challenge that you have of bye weeks coming in. So there's a lot of different stuff out there, and this week's going to be some decisions where you have to figure out, hey, has this guy been a flash in the pan, or is this someone that you're kind of planting your flag on that, nope, I believe in this guy, we're going to ride with him and go. And there's a couple that we got some questions on. One of them, we had a listener who was asking, he's in a Giants predicament and has Sterling Shepard, who was in his IR slot, coming up and being activated, but then he had picked up Kadarius Toney, and Toney almost seemed like he was kind of taking that role. What if you're in that spot? And I looked over his roster. I think I got him one other idea. He was setting himself up for a bye week quarterback fill in, and maybe is going to figure out how to shoehorn it in there. But without that, they really were the two bottom guys on his roster. What would you do? Do you think that Shepard's going to come back in and take that, or do you think with the investment in the first round and the role that Kadarius Toney has long term with the team, do you think he stays in there? Who do you like out of those two?
Yeah, so I think obviously I think Kadarius Toney has more talent than Sterling Shepard, and the commitment there I think is going to matter. I will say that Daniel Jones had a nice connection with Sterling Shepard all through the preseason, and also when he's been able to play a little bit here, in the regular season as well. 18 catches on the year, 22 targets. So I think that'll be there, but I think I'd rather personally have Kadarius Toney and just assume that with all of the injuries that the Giants are dealing with, even if Shepard's on the field, Kenny Galladay is probably not going to play this week. Darius Slayton's still hurt. Who knows? Shepard, may get banged up again. I'd rather roll with Kadarius Toney if it was the choice of keeping one of those two guys on my roster, especially if it's the last roster spot, and hope that I got more of a boom project with Toney instead of maybe the more solid play with Sterling Shepard. So I would probably lean Kadarius Toney in that regard. And I think this week, like I said, I think Kenny Galladay most likely won't play. So I think it won't matter either way, at least for 1 week.
Yeah, Roman was in here saying that it's tough to know if Jason Garrett has a brain, because if he does, he would keep playing Kadarius Toney. But that's not an obvious investment there. That's not an immediate decision.
That is a very fair comment. Yes.
So we have another question that came up here, and Breck's asking, and it leads into one that, so I'll throw a couple more names at you. But he's asking about, can I trust Devonta Booker? In pre-show, we were kind of talking about this constant just merry-go-round of new running backs that come up every week. So this week you have Darrell Williams filling in for Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Kansas City. You have Devontae Booker filling in for Saquon out in New York. You have now Khalil Herbert jumping in, and he was kind of the 50-50 role with Damian Williams last week. Now Damian Williams went on the COVID list, which I think this late in the week means he's out for Sunday. So now you have Khalil Herbert. And then, maybe Jerick McKinnon try to nose in there with Darrell Williams. How do you, the questions here at Devontae Booker, but how do you kind of rank those four with them putting themselves out there as new options in the running back circuit?
Yeah, well, I think for this week, I think the obvious call for me, at least, is Khalil Herbert, just because of the COVID news on Damian Williams. And I may have almost said that anyways, simply because I feel like the Bears just are more of a, going to have more of a rushing attack, especially than, it seemed like the Chiefs, even though the Chiefs have a more high powered offense. You saw the carries last week. I think it was like 16, 18, something like that from a carry share. So I think the volume is going to be there for Khalil Herbert no matter what. And I think Justin Fields will continue to evolve and get a little better, although the Bears coaching staff, similar to Jason Garrett, are, seem to be kind of clueless as well. But I would probably, put Khalil Herbert there, especially for this week and maybe going forward too. I think that Darrell Williams is interesting, but the Chiefs just don't run the football. I mean, we saw that with CEH, through the first part of the year. He just wasn't getting the volume in that offense, and I don't think that's going to change necessarily with Darrell Williams. I don't think Darrell Williams is suddenly going to, grab 20 carries or something like that. So a good offense, so maybe some goal line opportunities.
Yeah. Probably the highest scoring opportunity of any of the four, but probably the lowest volume out of any of the four.
Right.
Or the three, the top three.
Right, but I probably would put him a little bit, over Booker because of that. I just don't want to think about the Giants. Everyone, they're just, Daniel Jones coming off the concussion, and I think he's going to play this weekend.
He did take snaps today in practice,
so that's positive. But Daniel Jones, he garners some of those rushing yards kind of oddly out there in New York, and I guess I'm not exactly sure how long Barkley's going to be out. If history says anything, he might be out for longer than we think. I haven't seen, personally anything that says he's going to be out long term. But that ankle certainly didn't look great on the sideline. It was pretty swollen. But I think I'd probably go Darrell Williams over Booker personally. But just slightly based on that offense. Booker might get more volume, but who knows? With the Giants.
And just from a raw question bracket, asking, can you trust Devontae Booker? It's not a matter of trusting him. It's that running back is a wasteland. Rich and I were talking pre-show, like people are debating, do I need to start, the Damian Harris and Mark Ingram and, Brandon Bolden and people like that. Devontae Booker is going to get touches. And if you have a guy who's getting volume in an NFL offense, you're a leg up because, you have the San Francisco backfields on bye this week. You have Alvin Kamara's on bye this week. People weren't playing the Jets. You have both Mike Davis and Cordarrelle Patterson on bye this week. And then that you add in the injuries to CEH, to Saquon, to Mike Montgomery, and to Damian Williams now. There's just not that many great spots to be in. And then another set of muddy backfields going tonight. You have to make some early decisions on, are you going to play a Fournette or maybe a Gio Bernard if you're in a weird spot, or Miles Sanders, who hasn't been getting touches lately. There's some odd ones coming this weekend.
Let me tell you the weird spot I'm in. I'm actually tonight in 2 leagues because of some really strange things. I'm actually starting Kenny Gainwell in 2 freaking leagues tonight.
But honestly, that's the kind of spot that we're in now, especially, you advocated strongly for it, and I certainly have leaned that way in several leagues. If you went with the tight end differentiator this year, or heavy on wide receiver, or made an investment in one of the Mahomes, Kaiir, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson kind of quarterbacks, you probably did it at the sacrifice of running back depth. It was really hard to get both. And then you add that in. This year has been, all the injuries. And honestly, not a ton of surprise breakout running backs. There haven't been a ton of huge, out of nowhere awesome running backs popping out. It's kind of tough. And I think that a lot of people are going to be in that same spot trying to figure out, how do I get to this point? How do we... who do I play when you're there? And there's just, I don't know, not a ton of immediate obvious answers that, unless you took, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, Zeke, those handful of guys, Kamara, you're hurting for what you're going to do at running back.
Yeah. And, even if you tried to do, I don't know, the right thing or the traditional
Sure.
thing and try to go 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds. I had a team where it was the FFPC team, and I'm actually doing okay because of some free agents I've hit on, but I went with Chubb, Chris Carson, and I think Damian Harris threw in Tyreek Hill. I sprinkled in Tyreek Hill there, but I mean, I'm not in love with that. I'm not in love with that. I mean, I like Chubb, but even Chubb's, Kareem Hunt's got more fantasy points than well, he didn't going into last week, but Chubb had a good game last week. But Chubb's been good, but obviously Carson has his issues right now, and Damian Harris has been a disappointment. I know we're going to talk about him in another question a little bit. So even if you did the right thing or the traditional thing, I much rather have had the stud wide receivers like we've had in some other teams and been trying to scrap along a backfield because honestly, 75% of your leagues are all scrapping along backfields right now.
Yeah.
So if you have that differentiator,
And this year, it was almost impossible. A ton of teams have a good running back. A ton of teams have Henry or Eckler or Zeke or Aaron Jones or Kamara and have done reasonably well. And then those guys went fairly early. So then if you were late in the first and you got into the other ones, you might have gotten a Chubb. Jonathan Taylor just finally had a good game. Antonio Gibson's been okay. Mixon's been okay. But unless your turnaround guy, honestly, the only 2 or 3 people were if your turnaround guys were Kareem Hunt or DeAndre Swift. Other than that, you don't have 2 good running backs. It's really, really hard to have nailed both of those picks to be able to have those in that spot. Some people picked up Cordero Patterson as the only big surprise guy. Everybody else is, people that you kind of expected and had, Chase Edmonds has 1 good game. Jamal Williams has 1 good game. Myles Gaskin plays horrible and then has an awesome game that virtually no one got credit for because he just had 2 carries. So everyone benched him and had his 31 points on the bench because unless you were screwed at running back, you just didn't have a chance to play him. Running back has just been a mess this year. It's
I would like to say that I was a savant and saw the Myles Gaskin game coming last week, but I just was screwed at running back and started him again and got lucky with the the 31 points in one of my Apex my fantasy leagues. But yeah, I was not happy. I remember starting last week. I was like, I have to start this guy again. And I was like, oh, look, he's catching touchdown passes. This is great.
Yeah. So we got another question here. I'm pretty sure Fogality is just bragging here. But I've got a tough decision on wide receivers because he has to choose 2 in a flex with Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Kadarius Toney, and saying, do I just run with Kupp, Jefferson, and Chase? Looking at the matchups, Washington is going against the Chiefs. Sitting Terry McLaurin against the Chiefs would be really hard for me right now. Cooper Kupp is wide receiver 1 overall. Yes, obviously you are in a phenomenal situation to be able to do that. You're the kind of team that, I'd be seeing how desperate the team with Alvin Kamara on bye is and trade one of those receivers for Alvin Kamara and just eat his bye for a week. Man, that is an awesome situation to be in. I would go with Kupp and McLaurin. I guess Jefferson technically has the hardest matchup with the Panthers and probably Stephon Gilmore's first game. So I guess maybe I'd go with Kupp, McLaurin, and Jamar Chase, but that's crazy to bench Justin Jefferson.
No, actually, I was about to say the same thing, Greg. And one thing to point out is, through the first 5 games of the season here, the Carolina Panthers have given up the least passing yards on a per game basis. And, you're on the road in Carolina. I know we've talked about, Kirk Cousins, he got off to a really nice start, but the last 2 weeks have struggled a little bit. Yeah. So I think if you're going to bench Justin Jefferson, obviously you're in a phenomenal situation, as Greg pointed out. This is probably the week to do it and roll with Kupp, McLaurin, and Chase.
And he was a DNP today. Like, he did not practice today. Justin Jefferson didn't. So I don't know that there's anything significant that he's not going to play, but obviously he's not in full great health right now.
Yeah. So, hey, there you go. To make yourself feel better, you're just doing risk avoidance, and you're sitting Justin Jefferson. But no, I think Chase, McLaurin, and Kupp are good calls. And again, McLaurin's got, I believe, 50 targets on the season going up against the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Washington should have to throw the ball a little bit. Tyler Heineke hasn't been terrible, which has, been a little bit of a surprise, which has been nice. And obviously Jamar Chase has quite the connection with Joe Burrow. Burrow's going to look for him constantly. So I think that's a smart play. And yeah, you can look like a fantasy genius by saying I benched Justin Jefferson, and if they all outscore him, you're going to look real good.
So Jason here just giving us a little shine, saying, I saw your guys' draft shows, saw you guys talking about drafting a running back, or like the anchor running back that we talked about. Take your one and then hammer wide receiver and everything else for a while. Yeah. If you did that, the early running backs, I mean, obviously McCaffrey's injury, Saquon's injury, but that was the only spot, is getting the Derrick Henry, getting the Kamara, getting the Aaron Jones, getting those guys early, and then hammer it away, because everyone in the middle of running back has been a mess to this point.
That hero running back strategy really right now is looking to be, the best given the current mix. So if to his point, if you got that anchor running back and then fill in the, kind of even ignored running back too even, and sat there and then ran with wide receivers, tight ends, and a quarterback, you're probably in the best shape right now, because I think, again, as we mentioned, even those teams that maybe did the traditional 2 running back strategy high, they're probably not happy with their situation right now. So the one anchor running back hero strategy looks to have been the best going into the season at this point.
Yeah. Brad here asking a question. He's been offered Joe Mixon for DeAndre Swift. What are your thoughts on that one? He said half PPR.
I would keep DeAndre Swift in that situation. Even at the half point PPR, Detroit is using both Jamal Williams and Swift, very similarly, but Swift's been productive. And Mixon's been dinged up already on the season a little bit. And, I like Joe Mixon going into the season. I thought this could finally be, a big year for him. And it's certainly early on. But, I just have a hard time thinking that all of a sudden Joe Mixon's going to turn into a 25 carry bell cow running back that's getting 100-yard games over and over again, especially since, Cincinnati does like to pass the ball a little bit. And that defense, while it's playing decent to start the season, at some point probably will regress, and they're not going to be protecting leads, I would say, late in games all the time. I think they're going to come back down to earth a little bit. So I would personally hang on to Swift if I'm reading that trade correctly.
That's the way I interpreted it, was that he had Swift and was being offered Mixon. Yeah. But if it's the other way around, I agree. I would take Swift for Mixon.
Go get Swift, right?
Well, and it's not a Joe Mixon's. Here's Joe Mixon's touches by week: 33, 21, 19, 17, 11, in order. I don't think it's an accident that, some people, and myself included, were questioning, like, hey, now with Gio Bernard gone, is he going to be this bell cow, every down back, being able to just take a huge workload? And I think what they're finding is he's just not built like that. He's just not ready to be that guy. So I think he's fine. But the usage that DeAndre Swift is getting every single week, and especially their game script, he's just a big part. He has a lot of those nice, easy cleanup catches later in the game where he's getting 40 to 60 receiving yards every week, and the half PPR cuts it down a little bit, but you're still talking about somewhere in the 10 to 18 point range every single week. It's a really nice buoy.
Yeah, I mean, 29 receptions on the year for DeAndre Swift already, and to your point, Jared Goff's not the type of quarterback that's going to push the ball down the field constantly. They obviously don't have wide receivers to do that. So, getting the running backs involved in space in the passing game is obviously a big part of that offense. That's not going to stop. And the Detroit Lions aren't going to suddenly be, and even if they started winning games and were, ahead and having to hand the ball off to Swift and or Jamal Williams, I mean, that's not a bad situation to be in either. So I think, you just either acquire Swift or you hang on to Swift depending on that situation.
Here's a couple for games tonight. Mentality asking, start Zach Ertz or Dalton Schultz?
I think that's a pretty easy Dalton Schultz for me. I mean,
yeah, I will say, yeah, I agree. I do think it's Schultz. In other situations, Ertz, had 4 for 53 and a touchdown, 6 for 60 in recent weeks, and Dallas Goedert's out tonight, and Tampa Bay's offense or defensive backfield is bad. So if you're in, honestly, tight end is a similar wasteland to running back right now, that if you don't have one of the real dependable top handful of guys, it could get real sketchy. If you're in a spot where your guy's on bye or you lost someone due to injury, I don't think Zach Ertz is a horrible flyer to take this week. But Dalton Schultz has been really good. Like, Dak's gone to him far too much. And especially the fact that he got barely anything early on in the season. The last couple weeks, 6 for 80 and 2 touchdowns, 6 for 58 and a touchdown, 6 for 79, 7 or 8 targets every single game. At tight end, besides Travis Kelce and early Darren Waller, that's as good as you're going to get. It's hard to top that.
Yeah, and the Cowboys are on the road in New England, so I guess if you have a little bit of concern, sometimes I feel people, especially with the Dallas offense, they feel more comfortable with them at home, on the turf in Big
Sure.
D. But again, like to me, just right off the top of my head, without even looking at anything, I just said, Dalton Schultz seems to, he seems to be the guy that I would feel most confident in. But Greg, you do make some good points about the Tampa Bay secondary being poor, but I would still probably lean Dalton Schultz, and I guess not overthink the situation.
I agree. And Ertz is one of those flyer guys. You had Gronkowski, you have Hawkinson, but he's dinged up. He's a guy that I like, a guy I know you're a big fan of. I like David Njoku for the season this year. I might play Zach Ertz tonight this week over Njoku with Goddard all the way out and against Tampa Bay secondary, whereas I'd rather have Njoku for sure the rest of the season over Ertz. That kind of situation.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Another one for tonight. Charles G is asking. He needs an RB2 option and is in kind of the ugly area that we are. Miles Sanders tonight, or wait on Melvin Gordon or Nyheim Hines. So Sanders is tonight against Tampa Bay. Awesome run defense. Gives up a fair amount in the pass. Gordon and the Broncos are playing the Raiders at home. Nyheim Hines and the Colts are playing the Texans. What do you like out of those three?
I would probably go with Melvin Gordon as the play against the Raiders. Obviously the Raiders coming off a little bit of chaos this week with Mr. Gruden. Broncos are at home. Melvin Gordon's been productive. He's not. I think everyone went into the season going, "Oh my God, Melvin Gordon's kind of an older running back." He's really not. He just he hasn't performed well the last couple of years, but. Again, we mentioned it in a lot of our pre-shows, shows before the season. He has that big contract. They're obviously giving him the football. Javonte Williams will certainly take that job at some point. I don't think it's yet, although Javonte Williams has looked pretty good in limited opportunities so far. But I think Melvin Gordon will get the ball against the Raiders at home, and 282 and 2 touchdowns on the season isn't terrible. I certainly think that's. More consistent than Nyheim Hines. He's been really boom or bust as far as, even his boom's not been great, but he's been really boom or bust just from any production perspective. You would think the Texans, the Colts are going to, obviously run the ball, but I think that's more of a Jonathan
I love
Taylor
Jonathan.
game.
Hey, yeah, I love Jonathan Taylor this week. Not sure about Hines.
Right. And Sanders, we crapped on Sanders all preseason, and then I ended up getting him in 2 of my 9 leagues, and I'm benching him actually, and actually I'm starting Kenny Gainwell over him in 1 league.
It's really hard not to. I had a league where I needed 4.5 points to win going into that Monday night, and whatever it was, the combination of what Sanders got was 2 carries and 1 catch, and it destroyed it. I know a couple people in the chat asked about Melvin Gordon. He was a non-participant Wednesday, a limited participant Thursday, and Denver did the same thing last year where they managed his practice reps a lot. So obviously check in on that. That is a that is a West Coast 4 o'clock start. So you'll need to be careful with that. Let me look at the other games and the guys you asked. The Colts are early, so that one is, you do need to check in on that as the week goes and make sure that he's progressing and is a limited or a full participant Friday. If he were to somehow take a step back and not participate Friday, then you'd need to be careful because you don't want to get caught with a 4 o'clock start and then finding out at 3 o'clock that Melvin Gordon's a healthy scratch and you don't have anyone to put in there. So watch that one carefully. Right now, I wouldn't have a concern. I assume he is going to start.
Excellent question, though, Charles G. and others.
Adam D. here, a common contributor in our Cover One Slack channel and the fantasy Slack and the other ones. Best bet desperation waiver wire play out of Tyler Boyd, Darius Slayton, Zach Pascal, Randall Cobb, and Christian Kirk.
Well,
each have had one good playable week all season. It's been great.
Yeah, and honestly, that's not even a. I wish our waivers looked like that in our leagues.
Yeah,
that's not a complete desperation play. Just 2 off the top of my head. Boyd and Kirk kind of stand out to me off the top of my head. Randall Cobb kind of had that one game where it looked
just one,
and literally like nothing else other than those 2 touchdowns in that one game. Darius Slayton, I'm looking right now. I don't know if he's going to play this week. Yeah. Do you have any injury info?
Yeah, I'm
On
pulling that
Darius
up
Slayton?
right now. What his practice status was today, just to update it. He was limited, so he was a non-participant Wednesday, limited participant today. Same as Shepard. Galladay was doubtful and did not practice. Yeah, that one's tough. But it is limited, and now also the the explosion of Kadarius Toney has to come at someone's expense. And if you ask me
Yeah.
if that's at Slayton's expense or Shepard's expense, I'm going to say Slayton, and that Shepard maintains his role with Toney versus all three of them being good. So I'd eliminate Cobb. I'd eliminate Slayton.
Agree. So now we're down to Boyd, Zach Pascal, and Kirk. Pascal's actually had a decent kind of secondary role for the Colts. Michael Pittman's certainly taken the lead there, I think. And I don't actually have it up in front of me, but I'm thinking, I believe it's somewhere around the 18 reception, 20 reception, like 30 target type range for Zach Pascal.
Yeah, 28 targets, 18 catches, and a
look
solid
at that.
second. And I think T.Y. Hilton's still a full week away, so this might be your last week to play Zach Pascal, because I think Hilton will soak up some of those targets or at least minimize Pascal's role. But it's been okay. That means you're getting 6 targets and 3 to 4 catches every week. That's not nothing. And he's 3 touchdowns so far.
It's interesting. The Colts are at home against the Texans. So, again, if they play like they did at least in the first 3.5 quarters against the Ravens, I don't know how much they're going to be slinging it down the stretch, although who knows? It could be, Colts could just disappear again in that one. I think I would probably try to grab Tyler Boyd. I mean, I just think that in general, Burrow is playing the best. No offense to Kyler Murray, but Burrow's playing well from a quarterback perspective. Yeah, I think they are going to throw a little bit in Detroit. I also don't think that they're a team that they're not used to winning yet. And I'm not saying that because you're not used to winning, you don't just try to close out games by running the football if you have a big lead. But I think they're still going to throw the ball late in that game no matter what. So I would probably go Tyler Boyd, but I wouldn't be I guess I wouldn't fault you for going Christian Kirk against the Browns, because the Browns secondary is banged up. They got banged up big time last week. They gave up a 47 burger to the Chargers. I think they're going to get some of those guys back this week, like Denzel Ward and Greedy. They're looking like they may play, but they're going to be dinged up. So I wouldn't be upset if the person went Christian Kirk. So I would go between Boyd or Kirk personally.
Yeah, and it is weird because Kirk has Rondale Moore finally, I think, out-snapped him and ran more routes than him this past week. Tyler Boyd has T. Higgins coming back, so there's Slayton has Shepard coming back, his own injury plus the emergence of Kadarius Toney. Pascal has T.Y. Hilton coming back. It's all these are all kind of just different. Weird,
I guess
dark,
I will
dark throws. The matchup probably is the tiebreaker for me, and I agree on that sensing.
I will make one more comment to pay attention to DeAndre Hopkins' status, though, because the Cardinals have a lot of COVID issues going on, and Hopkins has been out for 2 days with an illness. They haven't said he's in COVID protocol yet. He just has an illness. So keep an eye on that. I'm not sure when you're obviously have to make your waiver wire move, but if Hopkins is out, that certainly swings my decision to Kirk
100%.
Against the Browns. 100%. So you may even want to say, hey, roll the dice that Hopkins is either going to be limited or maybe outdo the illness and say, hey, if it's a coin flip between the two, grab Kirk and see if you can catch lightning in the bottle a little bit and hope that Nuke's out this week against a banked up Brown secondary.
No, it's a great call. I think that's for sure the highest upside hope is that Hopkins is either out or limited and you get, the highest upside with Kyler playing and, like you said, some of the injuries in the Cleveland secondary. Another one here from William Trout. Need one out of either Hollywood Brown versus the Chargers, Manny Sands, Emmanuel Sanders versus the Titans, Darrell Williams versus the Washington football team, and a half-point PPR for flex. And then he separately has Mark Andrews and Dalton Schultz for tight end, which is amazingly like the best tight end depth you can possibly have nowadays. Is you actually have 2 playable tight ends. So let's do the flex first. So Hollywood Brown against the Chargers, Emmanuel Sanders against the Titans, Darrell Williams against Washington. 3 solid choices.
Yeah, I probably would lean Hollywood Brown versus the Chargers. Again, the Chargers defense, for me at least, has really not performed well this year. I thought they were going to be much better, with Derwin James back. And, the Browns should have won that game last week, putting up 42.
Their winning has hidden how many points they've been giving up.
Yeah, they're giving up a ton of points. Lamar Jackson, just threw for 400 billion yards and 4 touchdowns. I would probably roll at home. Ravens at home against the Chargers, a fun matchup. Should be a shootout. I'd probably roll Hollywood Brown. A second for me probably would be, oh man, that's tough. I don't know. Actually, I'm going to let you, Greg. I'm going to let you. I don't know. I was going to say Manny Sands, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, the tough part is, I mean, obviously Emmanuel Sanders is off to a great start. It's pretty touchdown dependent. Like his production is pretty significantly touchdown dependent, which, when the Bills are scoring the most points in the league, so it's not, and Tennessee has a terrible defense, so scoring more touchdowns certainly doesn't seem out of the question here. But without those, some of the other games have been 6 for 48, 5 for 54, 8 for 52, like good games, but it's when he has the 2 touchdown games that are obviously getting the attention. And I think there's as good of a chance of hitting that bomb and a little bit more volume with Emmanuel Sanders or with Hollywood Brown. But yeah, I mean, right now Sanders is the hot hand in the highest scoring offense in the league, so that's certainly not crazy. I would go with one of the 2 receivers over Williams just because I think Williams is the obvious guy, but what if they do a 60-40 split and all the passes go to Jerick McKinnon? Like, we just don't know how they're going to handle that in his first action, and they might just not run the ball at all. And then in the tight end play, I don't know how you can bench Mark Andrews after the game he just had. Like, Dalton Schultz is great, and he's right there behind, unless you have Kelsey, Waller, or Andrews, like he's right there as your next guy and in the running with the Kyle Pitts and people like that. But Mark Andrews just had a ridiculous career game. I don't know how you could bench him. I think you have to roll with him.
I agree 100%. Nothing else needed. Great commentary, Gregory.
Nice. All right, Charles G coming back with a super flex one. Russ being hurt, Matty Ice on bye. Should I pick up Geno Smith or roll with an Antonio Brown or Tyler Lockett in the super flex spot?
That's a very intriguing question. I'm
go ahead and look at the matchups and stuff here. The baseline rule, quarterbacks just score so many more points than every other position. By default, anytime you can get a quarterback, it normally makes sense. There are some limitations, and I'll give you an example. One would be the assumptions of things like, Davis Mills against the Patriots is you don't want to play that, and it's still a quarterback. Like, you still put up points. Jacoby Brissett got destroyed by the Buccaneers. You still put up points. It's really tough. There aren't that many Davis Mills versus the Bills kind of games where you literally score no points and are completely knocked out. But a good higher end receiver is a good question there when it's an iffy quarterback against a tough matchup. I think in Pittsburgh against Pittsburgh's defense.
Yeah,
that's a tough one.
So, I mean, obviously, I would go, based on everything you just said, I think Lockett, I would just rule Lockett out no matter what, because he's obviously catching the ball from Geno Smith. Sure. So, I think if you're gonna play Lockett, then you're thinking Geno Smith's not going to be horrible. So then, Greg, everything you just said, take the quarterback because the volume's there. Antonio Brown's really had it going with Tom Brady this year, but
there's still a lot of mouths in that offense.
A lot of mouths Thursday night in Philly. Yeah, I don't know. If I just get a little bit worried that maybe the Buccaneers boat race him a little bit early. I do think Tom Brady played well. He played not great in New England 2 weeks ago, 19-17. Last week he had a nice game with Antonio Brown. I would probably go Geno Smith, but it's like 55-45. Like, I'm not super confident in it, but I would probably, to your point, just go with quarterback and Geno Smith, because Geno Smith actually didn't look terrible coming in at the end of the game last week when Russ got hurt. So the Steelers defense, while is good, I don't think hasn't been as good as I think we all thought they were going to be this year. That pass rush hasn't been quite as crazy as we thought it was going to be. So I would probably go Geno Smith and assume that maybe Antonio Brown's not going to have back-to-back huge games, the last 2 weeks in a row.
So, and a couple pieces to add to that. You got to remember, even if the Steelers have a really strong defensive game, you don't lose points for sacks. He's probably going to get flushed from the pocket and run for some of those yards. Depending on how your league penalizes interceptions, if it's a 4-point passing touchdown league and -2 for interceptions, maybe that mitigates it a little bit. But overall, if you think Lockett's going to get a touchdown, you get the points from Geno Smith, just like you brought up. That kind of cancels that out. So I would be really hard pressed not to play a quarterback in any scenario. I can find a quarterback to play in the Superflex, just because there's so much garbage time at the end of an NFL game where you just rack up some easy points. I think it's hard not to put a starting quarterback in that spot. So I agree. I would roll Geno Smith. It's not crazy to do Antonio Brown. He could have a couple touchdown game, but a 200-yard passing 2-touchdown game for an NFL quarterback is a really low bar to cross, and that's the equivalent of a 75-yard receiving and 2-touchdown or 1.5 touchdown game for a receiver, which is a great game. Like, it's just that the upside is so much different.
Yeah, and just a couple stats to throw at the end of this one. The Eagles actually the third best defense against the pass from a passing yards per game standpoint at 194. Now, I think a little bit is that of that is because they get run on quite a bit. They're giving up quite a bit in the rushing game at 142 per game. But either way, there may not be as much passing volume tonight out of Tampa Bay as you may think. So that also makes me think, just kind of roll with Geno and the quarterback.
Yeah. So I want to dip back to one of the guys who reached out to us via Twitter for a question on a trade offer that he received. And it kind of is a good example of how rough some of these trade waters are right now. He has Allen Robinson and is offered Damian Harris. And, everything tells me to say no, but man, Allen Robinson's off to a rough start. What do you think about that trade offer that he received? And he explained he's deep at receiver and really scrappy and rough at running back.
So, I guess I don't know his other wide receivers, but I'm just assuming, he is deep. If he is deep at wide receiver and he really needs a running back, I suppose I would kind of reluctantly accept that offer. And I would reluctantly do it, not because, to your point, Allen Robinson is having some great season. I just am worried about Damian Harris. He has the opportunities, but last week he fumbled that ball right at the goal line. You know how that goes with Belichick. You've watched Belichick for a long time. All of a sudden he could be in the doghouse, and whatever. Mondre Stevenson actually gets some carries all of a sudden, and then just runs away with that backfield. And now you're sitting there with Damian Harris kind of in a secondary role. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. I'm very curious about Damian Harris's game this week, if he's going to have a little bit of a bounce back effort, if the Patriots are going to trust him, that type of stuff. But with that being said, if he does have a very, strong wide receiver core, I could understand accepting that trade and just trying to get a running back in that stable. On the Allen Robinson side of the fence, I do think he's going to be better than he has been as Justin Fields gets better. However, I also, there's this bromance going on between Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney. I'm not sure if you've noticed that or aware of that on the Twitter or on the social media. On the Twitter, they like to do the TikToky dances, and they like to have their little fun.
No, I was not aware of TikTok dances.
Oh, no, they like to do their thing. They do choreographed dances in somebody's apartment. So, they got this, bromance going on, which I think matters a little bit because Justin Fields, as a quarterback that has not established, a rapport with any of these wide receivers, I think he is going to target his bro, Darnell Mooney, a little bit more down the stretch here, too. So, while I think he's going to get better, I don't know that Allen Robinson's going to be this huge target monster that he once was. So that gives me some pause or concern there as far as keeping him. So I think, again, I would reluctantly accept that trade, but I'm nervous about Damian Harris as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is not some amazing heist that you're getting some sure thing. You're dealing one risky guy for another risky guy, and if the positional value helps your lineup, then that's fine. There's lots of trades where I don't love the trade, but you have to do it because you need that spot in your lineup. So it's simply an alternative to be able to go towards. Here asking maybe a trade offer, Aaron Jones or Devonta Adams the rest of the way.
Aaron Jones or Devonta Adams. Well, Aaron Jones or Devonta Adams. That's a pretty good situation to be in. I think either way, really. I think it kind of depends on
the same. It's the same logic of the previous trade. Whatever you're stronger at.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Great. It's a great point. If you need the wide receiver more than the running back, go with Devonta Adams. If you need the running back more than the wide receiver, go with Aaron Jones. I mean, just in a vacuum, Greg, I'm going to lean towards my boys at the wide receiver position. So I'm going to go Devonta
and
Adams
I agree.
in a vacuum.
I would lean Adams as well if I had the choice of the two. But if I was desperate and I was talking about Khalil Herbert's and the question that we had earlier with Fogality and that crazy wide receiver core that he had, I would definitely trade one of his guys in that kind of scenario when he had Kupp, McLaurin, Jefferson, Chase, Kadarius Toney, and all those different guys. That's the exact kind of trade where I would do, hey, yeah, I guess I kind of like him a little bit more, but yeah, give me that trade. So in his scenario, I probably like, Terry McLaurin, or I wouldn't trade Kupp, but Terry McLaurin or Jefferson over maybe Jonathan Taylor or Antonio Gibson. In a vacuum, I like them more, but if I had those 5 wide receivers, yeah, go ahead. Give me one of those guys so I actually have a playable running back, because then it helps my lineup more than 2 wide receivers on my bench every week.
Yeah, no, agree. I have one for you, Greg, just from the tweeter here. I know I can't pull it up. This is interesting because they had Josh Allen in it. So this particular person is Josh Allen and Justin Herbert at quarterback. Both have the same bye week coming up. Right now, Josh is his starter. He says he's desperate for a running back too, due to thin waivers and injuries. He was asking, should he trade Justin Herbert for Sam Darnold and Zach Moss? I immediately already answered it on Twitter. I'm just, to me, this seems like a pretty obvious answer, but I want to throw it out there. We can start some discussion just on in general. So what would your take be on that?
So, and what was it again? Josh Allen for?
So Justin Herbert.
The
for Sam Darnold and Zach Moss.
That's too far of a drop for me. There's a chance that Zach Moss is taking over that backfield. I don't think it's going to be as dramatic as it was in Kansas City, but it was a dramatic difference in Kansas City that Moss was RB1 and Devin Singletary was the backup. If that continues and he's more in the Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, Melvin Gordon, like playable running back every week range, maybe. Running back's a desperate place right now. And Sam Darnold's playing well, but man, Justin Herbert's really good, man. Like that. And I will say, this year has not been the year for the late round quarterback stuff yet. Like, there's been some good matchups, but a lot of the guys that people were excited about have, Stafford's cooled down a little bit, Cousins cooled down a little bit, Burrow's had some off and on weeks. Tannehill's been really rough. And if you have one of the Josh Allen, Lamar, Herbert, Mahomes, Kaiir, you're rocking every single week. You're just rolling and have a rock solid 25 to 40 points every single week. So if you have one of those guys, it's a nice differentiator right now that you're feeling very comfortable. The same as the comfort level you have with Travis Kelce or someone like that. They're like, I don't have to worry about that, wasteland that other people are fighting through. I would need a pretty solid return to give up one of those top end quarterbacks. Not that I wouldn't trade him. Like, there's still value there that you can mess around. If you stumbled into Jalen Hurts as your backup, or you have one of the other guys who really has stepped forward. But I would want more than Darnold or Moss to be able to move Herbert. I assume you were
100% agree.
Yeah.
No, I said the same thing. And I was actually in a similar position in the league that I just made a trade in with us, where I had Pat Mahomes and Justin Herbert. Yeah. And I just moved Pat Mahomes actually for Alvin Kamara because I really needed a second running back. So if I was this particular gentleman, I would try to move Justin Herbert and try to get something better. And honestly, I wouldn't even worry about getting another quarterback. I would pick up a quarterback off waivers to be my backup if I have Josh Allen. But I would also even entertain trading Josh Allen, especially depending on, if the offer was better for Josh Allen versus Justin Herbert. I mean, I like Josh Allen.
But fantasy-wise, that's not a difference. That's not a big drop-off.
I'm totally fine with rolling with Justin Herbert if I can get something really nice for Josh Allen. So that's what I would do if I was this particular guy. I would throw out, like the offer I just did when I threw out the Pat Mahomes for Kamara offer.
I would say, who was the guy that you packaged him with? You had Mahomes and wasn't it?
Miles Sanders. I put Miles Sanders in the trade,
which some people consider a running back. But honestly, in trade negotiations, that's part of the thing. Like, if you have a guy who his name represents more than what his actual value is, sometimes it's smart to move that earlier. So I think the question came up earlier on Allen Robinson. I think that's one. Maybe you can still get that top end wide receiver 1 value for Keenan Allen when Mike Williams has really taken a bigger chunk of that role. Honestly, DeAndre Hopkins' value was because he had monstrous target share, and he's still very, very good, but he's not getting monstrous target share anymore because there's just so many other mouths in that offense to be able to feed. Now is the point in the season where you still might have a window to get that value, and I'll give a couple examples. If you can pick up an improvement somewhere else, but it looks like a downgrade, and say we just lost Juju in Pittsburgh, if you can trade Keenan Allen or DeAndre Hopkins to get Chase Claypool and a perceived upgrade somewhere else because they think you're downgrading at receiver, if you ask me the rest of the season who's going to score more out of Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, and Chase Claypool, it's pretty close. I don't think it's automatically those guys, where at the beginning of the season they were tiers apart, they were full chunks in the rankings apart. If that can be a reason that you solidify your second running back spot, or get an upgrade somewhere else, or get somebody a playable tight end because you're really desperate at tight end and don't have somebody there, some of those are spots you can look at to downgrade per se, where the reality is you might not be downgrading.
Yep. No, I agree. Got another one for you, Greg, off the tweeter. Unless you want to pivot to something else.
No, I was going to just do one or two more here before we get to game time.
Okay. Well, this one does involve a player tonight. I thought it was at least a little bit interesting. Start Devonta Smith, obviously, tonight against Tampa Bay, or T. Higgins in a full PPR league.
Whew. So obviously in a vacuum coming into the season, I for sure like T. Higgins in that spot. I was a pretty big fan of his coming out. The Eagles' passing offense has been better than most people anticipated. Devonta Smith, 39 targets, 25 catches, and trending the right direction. So I had a couple iffy games, but the last 2 games, 10 targets, 7 catches, 122 yards, 9 targets, 7 catches, 77 yards. And that 7 for 77 was against the Carolina, which might be the highest stat line they've given up to a receiver so far. So certainly coming into his own, and that Tampa Bay secondary is rough. So just for the fact that there's so many other mouths to feed in Cincinnati, that you don't know who's going to have the rough game out of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Detroit doesn't have a good secondary either, so they both have nice matchups. I might actually take Devonta Smith against Tampa Bay this week. Same logic as I said about Zach Ertz versus Njoku. I probably would rather have T. Higgins the rest of the season, but this week I'd probably lean Devonta Smith.
I agree 100%, and I'm actually typing that back to this gentleman right now, so I'm on the same page with you on that.
Very nice. Another one here, Brad Brady asking for the matchup tonight, Leonard Fournette or Kareem Hunt?
I think it's really hard to not go Kareem Hunt in any situation. I mean, Leonard Fournette had, I think, 19 points or something like that last week, just off the top of my head. So he's had a couple decent games in a row, but Kareem Hunt is like a legit top 10, top 7 fantasy running back right now, even with Nick Chubb there. Both of those guys are great from a fantasy perspective. Kareem Hunt gets a lot more of the passing, looks in the Browns offense.
He's officially RB6 right now.
Yeah, I mean, you can't sit that, and it's not going to, that's not changing. That's not a fluke. That's not, some random, the Browns obviously use both their running backs a lot in their game plan. It's going to be the same this week against the Arizona Cardinals at home in that 4:00 matchup. Especially, Arizona has a pretty decent pass rush. The Browns love to do the bubble screens to wide receivers and tight ends to get the defense to back off on their pass rush a little bit. So that's not going anywhere. So I think this is an easy slam dunk Kareem Hunt all day over Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt is unbenchable right now in my opinion. He's just such a solid play. Do you want to know how disgusting Derrick Henry's season is? He has the same amount of carries and touches as Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb together. That's how much volume Derrick Henry has right now. Kareem Hunt is RB6. Nick Chubb is RB12. They're both having really nice seasons and producing every single week. Derrick Henry has their amount of volume combined every single week. It's absolutely bonkers. I get to watch it obviously on Monday night with the Bills playing the Titans, and although I do think the Bills are going to win, Derrick Henry's going to score. He's going to put up points, and he gets the ball so much that it's just unbelievable to be able to see a human chipping away at the way he does. It's just every single 35 carries, 28 carries, 33 carries, 29 carries.
It's insane.
He's a machine. It's unbelievable. All right, one last one here. We got Jay Bolin in the chat asking, should I do Khalil Herbert, Darrell Williams, Jacoby Myers, or Kadarius Toney? Full PPR.
So I mean, just off the top of my head, the two that stood out for me was Khalil Herbert and Kadarius Toney.
Same.
Then obviously you got Darrell Williams and Jacoby Myers going on there. One thing I don't have up right now because of my work situation in Seattle is the Vegas lines. Let me see if I can pull those up quickly here. So 44 in the Green Bay Chicago game. So that's a little bit more low scoring. Let's see here in the New England game. Yeah, New England.
54.5.
54.5. New England Dallas is 50.5. And the Giants Rams is 49. So some high scoring lines there, and a full PPR. I would probably lean Kadarius Toney and just see if that train can keep rolling a little bit with the Giants. But Khalil Herbert, and for me, those two are the two that I would consider the most out of that foursome.
Yeah, I think the ranking is right. Again, I like Darrell Williams. There are spots where I'm desperate and have to play him because I just don't have anybody else, but we don't know the usage there, and Kansas City doesn't love to run the ball. Jacoby Myers is solid and has been having an okay season, but just that New England offense is super hard to trust right now. So I don't know that I'd be ready to, when you have other options, I don't know that I'd be ready to trust him. He's had a couple of nice games. He's also had a 7-point and a 9-point game. Those are kind of hard to lean into. With Kadarius Toney, they're manufacturing touches for him. They're getting him the ball in multiple spots, and he looks electric. He looks good. The last 2 weeks, 9 targets for 6 catches, 13 targets for 10 catches. Obviously, the 189-yard game here was fantastic, and he looked great. Like, he looked explosive on the field, like the first-round pick that he was supposed to be. So I think from an upside standpoint, I do like having a solid, high-touch running back situation. I think Khalil's spot in Chicago is good there, but your volume, I think, jumped on. So we'll go through. I think I would lean Kadarius Toney barely over Khalil Herbert, but I think it's intriguing to be able to have that.
Yeah, I mean, Jacoby Myers, his target share has been decent. He has a couple major target games that he hasn't really produced on them. He had a 14-target game and a 12-target game, but yeah, I think I would lean Kadarius Toney. The only thing that would make me question that is if for some reason Daniel Jones stays out from a concussion perspective.
If it's Mike Glennon.
If it's Mike Glennon, then I would not go Kadarius Toney. So you'd have to kind of pay attention to that. So I would go Herbert or Toney based on and watch that injury situation.
So one last thing, I know both you and I have been doing really well in our picks so far this week. Let's give the folks a couple picks that we like going into this week before we wrap things up. I will say I'm on Tampa Bay tonight, -6.5. I like Tampa Bay, although I was a little concerned. Tom Brady has not covered for 9 straight primetime games. It's just super weird. The stat that I saw that didn't count the Super Bowl, so I was like, that's kind of a primetime game, but it was just
slightly.
It was just a weird stat that I was like, that is weird. How does that work? So I'm on Tampa Bay. I also like it. I don't like it. A lot of the games I like are some road favorites, which is never a healthy equation. But last week I was heavy on a lot of underdogs, and this week I like Dallas going into New England. I think they're just a better team, and I think that they should be able to cover the field goal that's there. I'm betting against Geno Smith. I'm not betting on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm just betting against Geno Smith, and that I think he's going to give up enough turnovers that it's going to go in their favor. And my fourth one that I went with this week that I was a fan of, I actually do think the Bills are going to be able to cover against Tennessee. It's actually the first time I've had a formal play on the Bills. I picked them in multiple games. I haven't really wagered on them much. Tennessee's defense is really, really rough right now, and I think that even if Tennessee puts up some points, I think the Bills will pull away and be able to cover on Monday night.
Yeah, those are great plays. For everybody out there, just from a money perspective, I'm 17-6 on the season, up 25 units from a betting standpoint. I do put my plays out on Sunday morning, so if you don't follow me on Twitter, jump on Twitter and don't fade me. I'm on fire right now, so check those out. So I'll put my actual money plays out on Sunday morning. I've been doing pretty well with teasers this year as well, so I'm still doing research on bets. But off the top of my head, I want to say the Browns are going to cover and win against Arizona. I actually do think they win the game, but I'd love teasing Arizona up to 9. I don't think the Browns beat the Arizona Cardinals by 10 points this week, and especially with that banged up secondary. Arizona sometimes does not play very well when they come out to the Midwest or out east, and I think they're a good team. I don't think they are I don't think the 5-0 undefeated. I don't think they're an unbeatable team, but I like teasing Arizona up to 9. I agree with your comments on Pittsburgh. I'm probably going to ride that one pretty good and put some, because also, Chris Carson's banged up too. So Seattle's in a little bit of a rough shape, even though Ben Roethlisberger is pretty much cooked in Pittsburgh, but I think that they can cover that particular spread. And another one I'm kind of looking at, I kind of like Green Bay going to Chicago. I know it's a division game, again, a road favorite. I'm kind of looking at that one. I'm also kind of looking at Cincinnati only having to cover 3.5 against Detroit. I do think Cincinnati comes back to earth at some point. I don't know, it might not be this week. So I'm probably looking at some of those. But again, check it out Sunday morning after I do some more formal research on it.
I like to find sometimes trios of games and do like a box setup with teasers where I'll pick 3 games. So this week I might do 3 different ones with the Chiefs, the Steelers, and the Bills. So I might do Chiefs and Steelers both basically to win because they're 6.5 and 5.5. So with the teaser you get it down to just needing to win. I don't think there's any chance Kansas City goes 2-4 and walks out of there with a loss. I don't know that they cover, but I just don't think there's any chance they walk out of there with a loss. I think that they realize their season's on the line here. Again, I'll bet against Smith in the same thing. Maybe the Bills don't cover. I don't think they walk away with a loss in this game. So getting in that spot where you could have Pittsburgh and Buffalo to win, Buffalo and Kansas City to win, Pittsburgh and Kansas City to win, any of those teasers are in pretty good spots where I think you're at a healthy position to come away with those ones.
Yeah, another one I'm going to maybe take a peek at. I kind of like Carolina at home as a small dog right now.
Same. I picked Carolina. I like that one.
So, depending, I'm going to watch the different injury situations on both of those teams going into that one. So if Cook, for some reason, is a late scratch, or, Jefferson or if CMC suits up, that may swing my opinion one way or the other, but I'm kind of taking a peek at Carolina right now.
And I'll say, if I have a feeling that with the line already so high, that if Daniel Jones gets scratched in New York, that I don't think the line would move that much with Mike Glennon going in. Right now it's 9.5, so maybe it goes to 10, 11.5, something like that. I don't think it goes over 2 touchdowns. If Mike Glennon starts that game, put as much money on the Rams as you can. They're already way better. That is not going to go well with Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, and those guys.
No, and that's another great game to, if you're into the teasers, to tease them down right now even and get them down, down to that 3-point type range. I think all day the Rams beat the Giants by 3 or 4 points. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, tons of fun here. I hope you have a pleasant evening out in Seattle. Go have yourself a nice dinner. Anybody that has any questions, make sure you find myself or Rich. You can find Rich at Burn River Sports. You can find me at Greg Tompsett. Make sure you check out our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Download the Underdog Fantasy app. Use promo code COVER1. Get yourself 10 free dollars. Be able to play around on there. I've been doing pretty well in my picks over there. But go enjoy Thursday Night Football, and everybody have some fun here. On behalf of Rich Haynes, I have been Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Fantasy, and we are out.